So not the smoothest opening intro. Hey, what do you got? You got two guys over 50 trying to figure out this technology, man. This is ridiculous. But I hope we're live. If not, we're recording it as a podcast too. So you guys will get to hear it as a podcast if nothing's coming over the screen. Is looking at a blank screen.
Right.
But go ahead and introduce us. EJ, get us started.
Well, welcome to Hardball Athletics. I'm Eric Johnson, Coach EJ. I'm the brand.
And I'm Coach Aaron Thigpen, the source.
And welcome aboard to really our first live Facebook event. And we will continue to do these as we get viewership and really talk a lot about the game of baseball and how it relates to sports performance, but more importantly, talk about subjects in sports, Aaron, I think.
Yeah.
That encompasses all the sports and sports performance.
Right.
And subjects that come up that we think are pertinent in society too. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to have a forum to talk about it.
Right. And again, it's not just about baseball athletes. I know I get a little bit of pushback or questions. Oh, is it just all baseball? No, it's not all baseball. We do draw some references to baseball, but a lot of the things we're going to talk about are going to be just general subjects that any athlete and parent and coach can relate to. So, don't get thrown by just the baseball thing. Today's subject is something that everyone can be involved in, and that's why a physical foundation is important to achieving technical performance. And in basic language, what I'm saying is you've got to have a foundation of athleticism and fitness if you're going to try to acquire higher levels of skill in whatever sport that you're playing. So without that basic physicality, strength, explosiveness, you're not going to be able to do some of the higher level things that you're trying to attain in baseball, in basketball, in football. So that's what we want to go over it a little bit today. We're going to talk. Feel free to send your comments. We'll kind of riff off of those and expand the conversation through that. But we're here to answer your questions as well as just drop a little bit of knowledge and experience.
The neat thing about this, Aaron, is, when we first started to talk about our podcast and going live, it's been since March and April 1st, and we really want to really educate the public on subjects related to sports performance and sports in general and how they are. And this is a great opportunity for us today to start and talk about some of these things, especially with this subject we're talking about today. This is something we talk about all the time.
Right.
And I think it's important just to kind of just talk about and comment on some of the things that you and I talk about.
Yeah. And the reason why I brought this subject up is as a performance trainer, I see these kids and kind of their rawest state sometimes,
Right.
I get them from when they're 8 years old all the way up. And my job is to analyze these athletes from just an athleticism standpoint. I don't evaluate their skill set in terms of whether they hit the baseball correctly or whether they shoot a free throw right. My thing is to say, hey, does this athlete's body work? And the scary thing is I'm finding more and more athletes aren't having the basic rudimentary athletic as well as fitness skills that they need to really participate and do well in sports. There's a notion nowadays that if you're not playing, you're not getting better. So you've got these athletes and parents who are kind of scared to move away from practicing and playing games and not training. And with sports being year-round, well, now you've got kids playing year-round, but they're not training and they're not doing the underlying activities in terms of building strength, explosiveness, coordination, balance that actually help them further their development in the sport that they're playing. So that's why this is important to me, because I find myself doing more rudimentary work and remedial work with athletes than actually doing either just baseline or advanced level work. And I think it's I think it's kind of a second thought, or people wait until there's a point of failure that they say, oh, you know what? Yeah, now let's go get faster. Right. Now let's go get stronger. Right. And the two need to work together. You got to have a balance.
There is balance, and I think it goes back to the point you said, Aaron, is that we have just one sport athletes now, and you and I have always said this for our 20-year relationship is multi-sport athletes are crucial in their development of athleticism. And playing other sports allows you to jump better first step quickness, more explosiveness, stronger muscles from head to toe. That development is through playing multiple sports. And as you said, now that kids are playing year-round in a sport, whatever sport that's being, that development of athleticism is a lost art now, I feel. Right. And I'm talking from all sports because I talk to other coaches and from different industries, whether it's soccer, basketball, track and field, tennis, golf, and they say, we're trying to build these athletes now. And the most interesting thing to me, Aaron, is the fact that golfers now, who were at one time 20 years ago non-athletic. Right. Now you're seeing these guys bigger, stronger, faster. You can thank Tiger Woods for that. Right. But it goes back to these youth athletes that are playing a sport year round. They don't have enough time to recover and to build this athleticism. When we were growing up, we played a lot of sports. When the season was, we played that sport. It was basketball season, football, then baseball. I played a plethora of sports, right. So I was a good athlete. Then my quickness was better. I was faster. I could jump. I could do a lot of things. And I think that gets lost now, and especially these days because it's so evident that you have to train this way. Right. I think as an athlete today, playing a higher level sport, whether it's collegiate or professional sports, the more sports you play, the better athlete you're going to be in the long run.
No, I agree. I call it, because athletes don't play multi-sport, right. And they actually just don't get outside and play as kids.
I like that.
Their repertoire of movement skills is limited, and it's limited to just the sport that they're playing. So I see it all the time. Kid soccer athlete. He's been playing soccer since he's 4 years old. Okay. And that's all he's played. So that movement skill set that he has, or that athleticism he has, is very narrow. It's really only pertains to soccer. Whereas if you get a kid who might have played some basketball or played some football, even just flag football or something like that, they get a variety of different movement skills that they have to learn to be good at those sports, and they cross over into their other sport. And when you just have, and especially a sport like baseball, where it's physical, but it's not as physical from an athleticism standpoint.
Correct.
Because your practices aren't that way, your training's not that way. You find these athletes that they may be highly skilled in throwing a ball, swinging a bat for their age range, but they can't run, they can't jump, they can't change direction, you name it. And so I feel that these athletes, and I see it, they inevitably hit a wall. And that wall might be at age 12, might be at age 14, might be at age 16. Because you can only improve the skill set so much, but all sports still come down to who's strongest, who's fastest, who's more explosive, all of those things. Yes, you've got to have the tactical and you've got to have the skill set, but all those things being equal, if you have kids that have the same time in, the athlete's the one who's going to dominate. And even in the younger ages, if your parents think about this, when you go to some of these tryouts, who are the athletes making the teams? They're taking the fastest kids, they're taking the strongest kids, they're taking the most athletic kids first, even though they may not have a skill set built up yet. Right. And I think it's just important that parents understand that, and they learn to integrate the physical development and foundation. Now, what does that mean? At different ages and different levels of development, that can be different things. But I still think, even if you just take your kid outside, is there something funny with my kid when he runs?
Right.
Can they jump and land in balance, coordination?
Yes.
When they throw an object, doesn't have to be a baseball, any ball, is there balance and coordination and fluidness to what they do? Those are some 3 basic human movements,
Right.
that everyone should have some control over. And if you see an awkwardness to that, and if you see a disconnect to that, if you see them struggling to do that, that's going to manifest itself in the sport. And you're not going to be able to hide from that. And I just think that parents are doing their kids a disservice by neglecting that or not realizing the importance of that. Most of us grew up, at least during my time, doing physical fitness.
I was going to say that.
And that was one time out of the year that always brought that to light. Now, obviously, it's just a school thing, and most people don't care. But again, in sports, when I see a kid and they can't do those 3 basic things, it's a problem. So I think that's where you start. And again, it could be for kids who are a little bit more advanced in those movement skills, those basic movement skills. You might want to look at strength. What's their strength level like compared to their peers? Are they stronger? Are they weaker? And can they do some basic strength movements? Can they do a push-up correctly?
Yeah,
can they
push-up, right, all the time.
A pull-up. Now, pull-ups are a little bit harder for most people, but you've got kids who you can pull off the street here, these neighborhood kids. You say, do a pull-up, boom, it's done.
They play a lot.
They swing on the monkey bars,
yes.
climbing trees. So you can't just say that's it's necessarily skill specific. Yeah, that's a physical activity. So you want to make sure that athletes develop some of those basic push, pull, jump, run, throw sorts of abilities. And I think that's where you start. And then from there, again, you can look at, that's just kind of basic strength in terms of using their body.
Well, Aaron, and this is, I think, something that we can explain to parents, when does that start? Because a lot of parents go, hey, we got to start lifting weights when they're 15 in high school, or, I heard that taboo, you can't do that. Or when should parents really work with their kids on these skills of jumping and all that stuff you talk about, that just the simplest forms of exercise that they should start at an age? Can you go over that a little bit, like a good start?
If you're going to start your kid in sports at 4 or 5, then you should be starting to do those things as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, and it doesn't have to be training. Okay. And again, that's the other thing, is parents are worried that, training, we're going to get to the whole, we got to take them to a trainer. We're going to get to this whole thing about the growth plates, and if they're, working too hard and injuries and all that. No, just take your kid outside and do those things. Jump. Do broad jumps for distance, hops over different things, over cones, over barriers, or onto things and off of things. Have them sprint, run. Say, hey, you know what? We're going to set up 2 cones 20 yards apart. Let's do some sprints. And work with them and at least get them moving. Even if you don't know the nuances of you should be teaching them and how, it's better to get them moving. Then you can always take them to a professional and who can work with them on those things. But at least start with some of the basics. But a lot of these kids, they're showing up to Little League and they've never played, they haven't even played the sport street ball,
Right.
They come to basketball, they don't even have a hoop at home. So I think getting your kid active and fit at least lays the groundwork for that athletic foundation you're gonna build onto that.
Right. I see a lot of professional athletes now in all sports people deem cross-training. And I always say that those are athletic moves that we were doing when we were kids, or people or generations before us were doing. And those are athletic moves to help that sport that they're in presently. So when they go and make a diving play, or they need to run fast or jump higher, those moves are engaged and they know how to do them. And I think a lot of parents should understand that that's a good thing. That's
Yeah.
a good thing to have kids run through hurdles and go through ladders on the ground and stuff. And plus, it's fun. It's not boring. You see, if you put stuff out, it's attractive to kids, and you put some color on it.
Right.
Kids like that. They don't mind doing it, you know. But if you just say, okay, we're just going to go do that, make it a game.
Right.
And I always like to say that. Make it a game, put a time on it,
Right.
see if you can jump further than you jumped before, and do it with them,
Right.
and do the activity, because I think at that time kids get engaged with the process and say, you know what, I want to go out and do that next Saturday or next Wednesday evening or whatever.
Well, yeah, and I think that's important, especially at the younger ages, whether it's at least 4 through 8,
Right.
because it allows them to experience movement and appreciate it and enjoy it. And so it's not work.
Right. Not work. You said the key
It's
word.
not work.
It's not work.
And unfortunately, the introduction of a lot of that stuff to kids nowadays is, okay, we're practicing and this is what we're going to do. We're going to do these sprints. We're going to jump over these cones. And really now they're looking at this as work. Well, I came here to shoot.
To play.
To shoot baskets. I came here to, catch a football. I came here to swing a bat. Why am I doing all of this stuff?
Right.
And so they look at it as work and they don't really enjoy it.
Right.
And I think that's important. And I think if you put that stuff out early and have them do those things and make it a game and make it semi-competitive so that you build up those competitive juices in the athletes, they'll appreciate it, they'll enjoy it, and it becomes easier to integrate into what they're doing as they get older. Now, after age 8, now you want to start to have some structure.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay,
Right.
and now you want to, say, hey, this is how I want you to do this drill through this ladder. And you start to give them the basic nuances of how they place their feet, their balance, where their arms are, so that now those movements start to resemble athletic movements that they're going to use out on the field.
Right.
Okay? That's where I think the next step is. Then after that, then you're having your older athletes, maybe they're 12-year-olds in 12 to 14. Now you're talking about adding strength components. And it might be, depending on the athlete, it could be medicine balls, it could be banding, it could be light weights. There's different forms of resistance training. Just because a trainer says, hey, we're going to do some training or we're going to do some resistance training, don't freak out and think it's going to be weight training.
Right.
But for some trainers it is. I can't lie.
Right, you can't lie.
Some trainers treat kids like adults, and that's wrong. And some parents treat kids like adults, and that's wrong. Because I see the parents, I see them out there on the field, and the dad's got the UCLA strength and conditioning program, and his kid's 10 years old, and they're trying to do what elite athletes. And again, UCLA, you're talking that top 30 percentile, and who are in their 20s, early 20s, even mid 20s. And no, that's the wrong end of the spectrum.
That's the wrong way to go about it.
So you got to figure out what's appropriate, and you got to kind of match that where the kid is in his development. So there's so many different pieces of equipment, so many different ways to train. You can find something that's at the level of your athlete nowadays.
Right.
It's not like the old days where it was either dumbbells and weights or nothing. Like I said, you've got bands, you've got sandbags, you've got medicine balls of all different types that you can use to integrate and help the athletes build their strength. Because once they have that strength and they have that coordination, then they start to parlay that into explosiveness. And then now they become more dynamic. And now they start to parlay that into a dynamic baseball swing. A dynamic jump when they're rebounding. A dynamic cut when they're on the football field. So I just think that's important.
And that's interesting because as I watch kids develop these days in sport itself, when I was growing up, and even not even so much when I was growing up, 5 to 10 years ago, kids used to ride bikes all the time. I see less bike riding now. I don't see that in the street anymore. We used to see kids throw a football all the time. And that is, for me, ways to build your arm strength or your leg strength and your core strength of riding a bike, and you're going up a hill, and that's doing so much for your body that you don't realize it. And I see less of that now. And unfortunately, I would like to see more of it, because I think that those are core exercises for a young player, and even for a intermediate athlete that's 11 through 14, important with their development before they get into puberty and get into high school and stuff like that. That's the foundation of the basis of their body, their core of what they need to really grind it out and get to that elite level. And athleticism, as a word you and I use all the time, athleticism in their sport. This is a good athlete, because you can train an athlete.
Yes.
You can train an athlete, but if you have a person that's doesn't have those core athletic kind of physical capabilities, it's tough to train that in any particular sport.
Right. And parents, he said something that's very important. It's hard to train a non-athlete to play a sport.
Right.
And when they're more athletic, they're able to acquire the nuances and skills that you're trying to teach them in swinging a bat.
Mechanical
things,
right?
Mechanics of the things that you're trying to do. And even if it's just as simple as having your kid get out and ride a scooter or ride a skateboard, just riding a skateboard teaches balance, coordination. You're going to strengthen definitely that push leg. I was a kid who grew up skateboarding, riding bikes all day. And I used to have to skateboard or ride my bike to school. Well, my middle school was probably 8 miles across town.
Right.
And, I was a latchkey kid. So my mom was like, hey, get there.
Right. Exactly. I get that.
I could walk.
Right.
It'd take a long time.
Yeah.
But, me and my buddies, we'd hop on our skateboards or hop on our bikes. And we'd ride. And, so we got some of that. Some of that was by necessity, but we also spent all day outside playing. And, message to parents, and I know it's a different world now, and you can't necessarily have your kid go out across town.
Yeah, you can't do that these days, right? I get that.
But, you can try and provide some other safe spaces for them to do some of these things, because when they're able to go out and do these things, they're also able to discover what their body can do.
Right. And
challenge themselves. And, they won't just be riding that skateboard straight up and down. They'll start out doing that down the street, but next thing you know, they're going to try and jump off the curb.
Right.
And then they're going to start doing kick flips and other things. But you know what? All of that teaches body awareness, spatial awareness. It teaches how to fall, because you're going to fall, so it's going to toughen them up. There's lots of things that go on that we don't necessarily think about. Popping willies, teaches us balance. All of those things are great. And you can't put your kid in the bubble and think that they're going to be a good athlete or good baseball player just because you take them to baseball lessons.
Oh, right.
All week.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Just because they go to basketball lessons all week. That's not going to happen, because there's going to be a kid sooner or later, either age 12, 14, 16, 18, that is going to have that same skill set, and maybe not even have that same skill set, but is going to be stronger or faster or more explosive, and he's going to take your kid's lunch. That's simple.
It's simple, right?
That's simple.
Yeah.
And you've got to understand that a lot of the mismatches in athletics between the ages of 7 and 18, when you're looking at high school athletes, most of it has to do with levels of maturity and development.
Right.
And the bigger kids, i.e. older kids, tend to be bigger, stronger, faster, sometimes a little more coordinated.
Always.
And what are you going to do to combat that? You have to train. You have to continue to move your athlete's development along by working on these basic rudimentary things.
You know, it's interesting. It brought me back full circle as an ex-professional athlete, Major League Baseball player, is the fact the very first time I saw Bo Jackson on a baseball field, and I was a 19-year-old kid. I was playing for Team USA, and we were touring all over the country before we played in a couple of international tournaments. And I saw him because he was just got out of college. Kansas City had drafted him. They sent him to Double-A, played for the Memphis Chicks, and I went to his very first game because we were playing an exhibition game before that. And so he hits a ground ball to the shortstop, a two-hopper. And I'm like, oh, that's routine ground ball. He beats it out. He's past the bag. And I go, that guy's really fast. Next time he comes up, he hits a ball that goes so far, goes out into the darkness in Florida. I forgot where we were. And I said, that guy's really strong. Then he goes out and he makes this great athletic play in center field. He's running and he makes this diving catch. And I go, that's an athlete. That's not a baseball player. That's an athlete. And you could see, because of all the things that he did, obviously a great football player too. Yeah. But the things that he could do as an athlete transcended him in that sport of baseball. Yeah. And it was remarkable to see athletes play a sport. Now, I think right now in this day and age, you see athletes playing these sports at a higher level. Right. So my caution to parents is, don't think they're just baseball players and they train baseball-wise. No, these are athletic movements. Baseball, football, soccer, tennis, golf, track and field, all athletic movements that involve the core things, values you talked about at the very beginning. And I think that's super important. I guess the interesting thing is that what we see in our industry is that we see people come in for a lot of lessons or specific stuff just only for that. I think a core program for kids in a particular sport involves athleticism. So parents try to build some sort of core program of training your kid like an athlete rather than just a sport-specific kind of ideology. I think that's kind of getting foreign now. I think we're seeing more athletes like we said that.
Right. Good. Probably to wrap this up, I'd just like to say, take time or set aside time to develop their athletic qualities. First, develop that foundation of fitness. Make sure your kid can do the simple things: push-ups, pull-ups, dips, crunches, sit-ups, leg lifts. All of those things that we probably saw as Jack LaLanne.
Jack LaLanne. It was true though, right?
Yeah.
Jack LaLanne.
All great way to start with fitness. Great way to start. And, don't make it training.
Don't make it work.
Don't say, hey, we're going to do 50 push-ups. No, just get them started, slowly massage it till they can do more and more. Reward them, encourage them, have them do these things. Lunges are another great. Squats, all of those are really basic things. They don't require any equipment, and they really don't require a whole lot of expertise. So you can go online, see how a correct squat is done, see how a correct lunge is done, see how a correct push-up is done, and work with those things on your kid. Then when you're ready, then maybe you start to find a professional where they can start to say, hey, okay, now let's take this fitness base and start to work on some athleticism. And so now you are jumping over barriers and using some of the apparatus that you see out there, cones or things like that. But you can, again, start it at home just as a fun thing. But there are levels to this, is basically what I'm saying. And understand that you've got to take your kid through those levels and watch them. Parents, go out to these practices and watch how your kid moves. Don't just sit in the car and listen to the radio, unless it's our podcast.
Then listen, then stand there and listen.
But watch and just say, hey, how is my kid moving? Is there awkwardness? Are they off balance? Does something not look right? It doesn't necessarily take, a trained eye.
It doesn't.
To pick a lot of this stuff up. And if there's some issues and you don't want to take that on, then come find somebody.
Right.
Find a professional that can help you with those things. For those of you who have older athletes, it's still a problem. And
it is.
You may want to, your athlete may not want to admit it, but go out and watch them, talk to their coaches, and get some feedback, and say, hey, what does my kid need? And most coaches are going to tell you,
right?
Honestly,
they're honestly going to tell you,
hey, he's not fast enough, or he's not strong enough,
right?
But don't stay on this grind of, I'm going to lessen the athleticism into it.
Oh yeah,
because
don't do that.
it's a recipe for disaster and heartbreak once they get to that moment of truth, and they have nowhere else to go.
You can have said that any better, because we see it in the setting that we train here at Game Speed and at Hardball Athletics and AJ Sports. All this together, we all do all these activities together, and we see our athletes that it's, hey, should I go here now? And it's too late. Parents, start your kids on a program of some of this athleticism. But more importantly, even for those athletes that are a little bit more mature, get help.
Yeah.
I think that's the number one thing. Get evaluated, get assessment, get some help, and be honest with that.
Right.
And move forward with it. And it's never too late, because I know a lot of athletes are 30s or 40s or whatever in their particular sport, and they're trying to be more athletic.
Yeah.
So you can always acquire that, but you just have to work a little bit harder.
Right. Well, that'll wrap up today's live
Our
podcast, our first.
our live on Facebook, Aaron, as
Yeah.
you say. This is great. It's great. We love to interact and talk about different subjects that are out there in sports.
Yeah.
In sports in general.
And we do a podcast every Sunday. We're hoping to do a live at least once a month.
At least.
So join us. Again, we love your participation. We're doing these to get information and our knowledge out to you, but it's always good to know what's going on in your head, what questions you have, what comments. So your feedback is really what will drive some of the content of these podcasts. So
please just tune in. Again, I'm Coach Eric Johnson. I'm the brand.
And Coach Aaron Thigpen, the source.
We'll catch you guys next time on our Facebook Live.
See you later.